Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. How's everybody doing tonight? I hope all is well. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the new nerd in town. It is a warm evening here, wherever I am. And boy, do we have some stuff to talk about. I mean, just stuff. Stuff to discuss. It has been. First off, I'd like to, just quickly get off an apology for not being around on Sunday because I just wasn't feeling well, and I didn't want to put on a half-ass show that I was not really feeling well on. I was really not. I was out of it and stuff, and there's no point in making sense, even less so than I usually make. So here we are tonight. It has been a whirlwind of things happening since we last spoke. Yeah. How's everybody doing tonight? How is everybody doing? Welcome back to the listeners for the podcast later on. For those of you watching on YouTube and on Twitch, because, that's how I roll. Hello. Welcome to the new nerd in town. We've got a lot to discuss. Why don't we get on to discussing it? Because, you're not here just to listen to me say, it's been crazy, but here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the beginning of a new dawn, of a new age has started or has begun. For those of you who are not completely aware and have been living behind the rock that is under the rock of other people. I am talking about the rated R fad for comic book films. Now, this may seem like quite the old subject, and for some of you it is, because you've probably seen every single comic book movie that's ever come out, whether it's indie, whether it's some guy with his cell phone and just putting it up on YouTube, or you've actually seen all of the feature presentations from every movie, everywhere, at every time. Now, the latest of these rated R comic book movies just came out this past Friday. It's called Logan, and it is the third and final movie in the Wolverine series with Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, or as Logan, and Sir Patrick Stewart as reprising his role as Professor X, Charles Xavier, the head of the X-Men. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, right here, with 100% of anything and everything, I have not, I repeat, not seen Logan. So if you're going to spoil it, by all means, be a terrible person and do that. But I will not be doing that because I have nothing to spoil. What I do want to talk about is the impact. Now that Logan is out, now that the world has seen it, the reviews are out, the people are satisfied or pissed, the impact of a rated R Logan on the rest of the slate for Marvel, for DC, for Lucasfilm, for any of the major movie chains that have yet to come out with new content. This is what we're going to talk about, is how can rated R films in the comic book world thrive as well as Deadpool, Watchmen, Kick-Ass, and now Logan. So Logan and Deadpool, especially Deadpool, they're not really the first rated R films to come out in the comic book world. In fact, Watchmen and Kick-Ass came out first. Watchmen's another DC entity, and Kick-Ass is actually distributed by Marvel, but it's a bit of a smaller known story. Now, Watchmen was a fantastic film. Zack Snyder directed, written. It was a great film filled with filled with the light-hearted jokes, but mostly it had that dark edge to it. And for most part, replayability for it now that it's been out for about 9 years. Good lord, 9 years. Um, there's really, like I started rewatching it a couple nights ago when I was thinking about tonight's show, and I gotta say, like, it really is a wonderfully well done comic book movie. The Zack Snyder really had um, a lot to work with as far as story goes, as far as characters and content, and pushing forward a definitive storyline from beginning to end. And it was just a beautifully made story. The and then to just top it off, the visuals were stunning. The characters, costumes, the setting, the characters acting as Nixon and JFK. You actually got that sense of urgency as the minute hand went closer to midnight on the nuclear clock. So you really do feel this sense of it being a comic book movie without it really being that comic book movie like that we're used to with the MCU or the Bryan Singer X-Men movies that came before it, or the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. Like it was a comic book movie, but it wasn't those comic book movies. And I mean, it was great, and the fact that it was rated R, it really helped it push the storyline along. The violence was there, the cursing was definitely there, and yes, there was some nudity. But without that rated R rating on there, we would not have been we would not have had that wonderful, array of sort of explicit material, thus probably killing off some of the storyline because some of the explicit material is meant for pushing the storyline forward. Same thing with Kick-Ass series. Kick-Ass, hit girl curses all over the place. I mean, there's really no nudity in it, but it was all about the cursing and the violence. And the violence was quite abundant in that movie. But it's also quite abundant in the comic book series. So again, being that it was a rated R movie really helped push forth the story and made it really entertaining and made it so that the full story could be told so that the fans were happy, but also the fans of the comic book were happy because it stays truer to the comic rather than just, making it less violent or less vulgar just to please more people. Now, I'm not saying that all comic book movies should be rated R. That's actually just kind of stupid. Because then you're just gonna have blood, guts, people cursing all over the place. Tony Stark accidentally hits Captain America with a stray, shot, and he's just sitting there going, "Well, me." Um, you know, at times that might feel like it's pushed, like it's just unnecessarily put in the script just to push it forward. But um, for characters and comic books and stories that need the rated R rating on there just to help clarify like what this character is, your ability to tell the story really pushes forward. And that's what happened with Deadpool's release last year. Deadpool's nickname is the Merc with the Mouth. So we all know that he's got, an attitude problem. He's your anti-hero hero. And, he's going to be hilarious. He's going to have great one-liners, but at the same time, he's going to be violent. He looks to be an assassin for hire. His antics and his vulgarity come hand in hand with the kick-assery of Deadpool. And it really was a treat to see that, to kind of see the floodgates open and the the vulgar language, the nudity, the action was all just unleashed, and it really got to tell the story of Deadpool the way that the comic books intended and the way that the screenwriters and producers intended. So fast forward through 2016, we had the release of Batman v Superman, Civil War, Doctor Strange, Suicide Squad, and we come up to March of 2017, and now it's Logan, the third and final movie in the Wolverine franchise, and it too is rated R. Now, the first two films were rated PG-13, and I mean, wherever there's Wolverine, there's bodies. So there was plenty of action. There was a little bit of vulgarity in there, but you know, it was kind of like right underneath that rated R rating that uh but it wasn't quite there to push it over the limit. And that's fine. The movies, the X-Men Origins, all right, it wasn't the best film out there. They had a lot of problems, but none of it really was because it was not a rated R film. I mean, they completely screwed up the one character that the one other character that was the most recognizable next to Logan, and that was Deadpool. And since they came out with a movie last year and they fixed that one so we could all forget about Wade Wilson part 1 and just keep remembering the Deadpool that we have now, and the Deadpool teaser that came out with Logan, which was released on YouTube. And if you haven't watched that yet, then I'm sorry, but you need to go watch that. But it was just, the movie was fine as far as ratings go. It was just the storyline had a lot of problems, and the crappy characters that they had that weren't there, that were there instead of not being there. But now with Logan coming out, Joe Mangold, Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, they're all able to tell the story that they wanted to tell, and finally close it off with the story that they wanted to close it off with. They wanted to give Wolverine, basically have Wolverine go Wolverine all over the movie, and the action is there. I'm sure there's plenty of vulgarity there, but I'm sure because of all the Wolverine scenes between Logan himself and X-23, there's definitely going to be enough violence for them to say, yeah, it's rated R. Now, going forward, these two movies alone, Deadpool and Logan, have now opened the doors for other movies to be made and given that rated R stamp. Now, should all the comic book movies going forward be rated R? Again, no, because it just doesn't. At some point, it's going to look like it's pushed and purposely purposely thrown at people, and it's just not really going to go over too well. The MCU, for instance, the Captain Americas, the Avengers, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the spin-offs of everything like that. You don't really need those movies. You don't need those movies at all, really. You just need them to be entertaining. And Disney has already done a great job with Marvel, bringing the stories to life without them being overly violent. There's not too much blood in it. There's enough jokes to make it lighthearted, yet the stories still seem dark, like in Civil War and Captain America's Winter Soldier. It really, it does bring and add into that that sort of PG-13 violence that still families could come in and watch it, yet the older comic book fans can enjoy it as well. And it's just a fascinating way that they've done it. And Marvel's done a great job at handling all this without there being too many problems. Um, Without there being too many problems with the storylines or anything like that. And yeah, I mean, if you want to get nitpicky, go for it. There's ways that they could definitely make each of these rated R. Civil War could definitely have been rated R. Just make all those fighting scenes and, show more death and destruction in the bombing over at Bucharest. You know, show us the grittiness of Black Panther. Let's see him unfolded. Let's see let's see the Winter Soldier really open up and just tear into these guys. Why not? Because that's what we want to like we didn't need it and Marvel and Disney knew that. So there's no problem for them to sit there and say, "Listen, this really doesn't need to be rated R." However, we'll make it PG-13. It's going to be enjoyable for everyone. And that's pretty much it. We'll just leave it there and people will still be entertained. Not a problem. Do you have a problem? No, not at all. So there's that line for it. And again, the spin-off movies that they've been doing, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, all of those movies have just done a fantastic job without needing the rated R stamp on them. Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah, there's a few sexual innuendos in it. Same thing with Ant-Man and all those movies. I still haven't seen Doctor Strange, but I'm sure it's got its own humor too with whatchamacallit, with Benedict Cumberbatch. But, for the most part, the MCU movies can stay PG to PG-13. Really, there's no I don't see any foreseeable movie on their slate that could push it to a rated R rating and not get any blowback. Now, that being said, there is some content that Marvel is releasing that would be considered rated R. And that's still tied into the MCU because Deadpool, Logan, and the X-Men are still kind of owned by 20th Century Fox. So the rights to them goes to Fox, yet they're still Marvel characters. But another group of another group of characters that might show up in Infinity War are the Defenders, who are all on Netflix. Punisher, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and now Iron Fist, which actually was just released today by Netflix. They're all on Netflix, which is pretty much the no holds barred version of television. So there's where you're going to find all your ultra violence, all of your ultra, sexual explicit stuff, the vulgarity. All of those shows are going to have that. So if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for your Deadpool or Logan-esque type of rated R awesomeness, if you would, definitely check out Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Luke Cage, and now Iron Fist on Netflix, because that's where you'll find the grit, and they'll still sort of be tied in to the MC universe. So that's where, that's what the MCU and Marvel is doing right there. They're kind of saying, all right, for those of you who are looking for the mature stuff, Netflix is where you want to go. We're going to keep releasing our other stuff on a PG-13 type thing for the movies, yet if you're looking for the nitty-gritty, head on over to Netflix. Those series are the ones that you need to check out. Now, for the future of the X-Men movies and Deadpool, that is going to have to be more on like a case-by-case scenario. The X-Men movies, again, have all been PG-13. Deadpool, rated R. Logan, rated R. X-Men Origins, PG-13. Wolverine, The Wolverine, PG-13. Almost R, but still PG-13. So with that now that we've been introduced to the official Deadpool, and we're kind of seeing the story close on Wolverine, hashtag I hope not, the uh, the future of X-Men movies are going to be a case by case rated R or PG-13 or PG. I'd probably say anything that has to do with the ensemble cast of X-Men, like First Class, like Days of Future Past, like Apocalypse, those are mainly going to be PG-13. There's going to be some graphic stuff in it. There's definitely going to be some, the fights, the occasional F bomb like there was in X-Men First Class, and in all of them. But for the most part, it's going to be kept down to a minimum because they're gonna want to get that younger audience, that audience that knows that these movies are fun, yet there is some stuff that are adult language or adult action. Now, as far as anything that would have Deadpool in it, Deadpool's movies by itself, like Deadpool 2 coming out hopefully next year or the year after, definitely going to be rated R. But the new X Force movie that will have Cable, who's yet to be cast, although David Harbour from Stranger Things is like kind of in the running for that. So the X Force movie with Cable, Deadpool, and a couple of other X-Men characters, again, depending on the storyline and how violent it could get. I mean, you already have Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool part of it. You're gonna nearly guarantee the rated R, but they could still cut out a lot of his segments or just cut it down, so that he's got a cleaner version and release that, and then do what DC's been doing for pretty much all their movies to date, for the most part. Now, on to the other part of that is DC. Because now that we've seen that Marvel can come out with rated R films, although they're not Disney Marvel, it's still Marvel. So now DC has to ask itself, are we comfortable releasing rated R films? Now, based off what they've released already, it's gonna have to be a case by case scenario. And what I mean is, looking at the past films that came out, Man of Steel, no, you didn't really need the R rating on that. Batman v Superman, I'm gonna say no, because most of what they cut out in the theatrical version was just time. There really wasn't any extra added violence. There wasn't any extra added vulgarity. It was just speeches from Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, and a couple of other, things that editors or Warner Brothers thought was boring, and they just cut it out. It was mostly a time issue after watching the Ultimate version. Suicide Squad, I think that should have been rated R. Only because we then would have been able to see the full potential of Jared Leto's Joker, and also maybe fill in the blanks as to who the hell the villain was, because I still can't figure it out. However, the Joker we saw was too soft. Heath Ledger's Joker was perfect, and that was a PG-13 movie. And I'm not saying that because it was PG-13, Jared Leto's Joker was not could not be full force. No, a lot of what was cut out was probably what would have made it rated R. Yet they're so afraid of not making money because kids can't go see Suicide Squad that they had to make it PG-13 in order to get more butts in the seats. So I think Suicide Squad should have been rated R. And from what I've seen from Wonder Woman, that doesn't need to be rated R. Again, lots of violence, but it's warranted violence. It's the same kind of comic book violence that we know. Justice League, again, I would liken that to the Avengers. I would say no for the most part, only because you want more people to come so that they could see the Flash on screen, so that they could see Cyborg and see Aquaman. And I mean, the film looks dark. the whole DC universe looks dark except for Wonder Woman because there's actually the sun actually shows up in Wonder Woman. So, which is weird because I've never seen the sun in the DC universe at all. But Justice League, I don't think so. The other film that I think might want to think about making rated R is Ben Affleck's The Batman, because then you would be able to see Ben Batfleck unleashed. I mean the fighting we saw him do in Batman v Superman, the kick-assery that he unleashed. If you were to put that in a rated R film, oh, take my money now. Where are the pre-sale buttons for that? Because I'll buy tickets to that now, even though I know there's no script. But that, and with the already brooding darkness of uh of the DCEU, then Batman will definitely bring it to a darker sense, and a darker like a just dark, creepy place, like a place that even Deadpool would be afraid to go into. So I would definitely say, yeah, Batman, give that the rated R stamp, because that just can only be more action. Nightwing, again, it's a toss up. The story is very dark, but and with the already darkness of the DCEU, what's not to give or what's not to like as far as making it a rated R film? But I would you know I would sit there and say that Warner Brothers would be cautious as to making a lot of their films rated R, only because they're not getting very good uh, ratings, and they're not getting very good reviews. And after a while, that's just gonna bite them. People are gonna stop going to see the movies. I mean, the if Wonder Woman tanks as v Superman did, as Suicide Squad did, I I you know I fear for Justice League. I fear for the rest of the slate, because here you're going to have a lot of people who are excited to show off their wonderful characters and their wonderful storylines and all sorts of stuff like that, and they won't be able to, because they were overruled by people who just wanted to make money. And you lose the one thing that is cherished by all these comic book fans, and that's the story. So, but along the lines of that, you don't want to just make your movie rated R in order to get more content in there. Now, the rated R content um of of Deadpool and Logan, again, yeah, it was a lot of fun. There was cursing, there was violence, there was nudity whenever there was any of that, but it helped drive the story just a little bit. And if that's what's needed, then that's what's needed. Now, again, with the DCEU, why don't you think about making the Batman rated R? Think about Suicide Squad being rated R. Sirens of Gotham, keep it PG-13, because the fun personality of Harley Quinn, and adding on any of the other women to it, it would it would help bring in larger audience. And they're fun characters. And we saw from Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman that, you can still have a fun PG-13 movie. So that's pretty much it. But again, now that Logan and Deadpool have come out, and the rated R comic book movies are now technically a thing, it will be it'll be very interesting to see what movies these distributors and the studios decide would be PG-13. Where would the line be? I know Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 will most likely be PG-13, but will Infinity War be rated R? Because that's just an all-out war. Is Thor Ragnarok going to be rated R? Because there's the gladiator scene and the the probably immense amount of fighting and all that. Who knows? We won't know until they actually announce it, and then even then we won't know why they've done it. Other movies like Deadpool, yeah, well, Deadpool is definitely going to be rated R. But I definitely would see that this could happen, and then you'll start to see some of the better comic book movies coming out, and then you'll eventually get the creme de la creme of a comic book movie breaking through and getting at least the nomination for Best Picture. And again, without having seen Logan, I've already said multiple times, and I'll say it again, I think Logan will get one of the main categories for best whatever at the Oscars, whether it's picture, director, screenplay, supporting actor for Sir Patrick Stewart, or leading actor in Hugh Jackman, or best supporting actress for Danfee. They are, they will be slated for one of those nominations. It has to happen. I know people were upset that Deadpool didn't receive a nomination, but guess what? that movie opened the door for movies like Logan to come out, for the passionate movies to come out. And it all started with Deadpool, with Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool. And again, it wasn't the first rated R comic book movie. Watchmen and Kick-Ass were the first ones. But in the mainstream comic book world, I didn't know Watchmen before the movie came out. I didn't know Kick-Ass until the movie came out. But I knew Deadpool. I know Logan. And I've grown up with Logan and Wolverine. I mean, Hugh Jackman's been playing that role for 17 years. So it's one of the characters, at least in the cinematic universe, that I've definitely grown up with. And I'm super excited that this movie gave it the close that it needed. Yeah. So that's my rant on rated R films, rated R comic book films.